Today we are talking about transparency, and I actually have the honor of speaking with Mel, who will introduce herself because I'm not, the formal person. And we're going to talk a little bit about transparency in your business and transparency in you, and how it plays out in a lot of different ways. So let me have Mel introduce herself.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for the invite. I'm the founder of Increase Your Visibility. I help entrepreneurs and teams attract business opportunities and build energizing connections. My specialties include event marketing, unique gifts and incentives, and helping you move from invisible to be visible to be profitable.
Excellent. And I'm excited to have you here. By the way, I'm Jonathan. You guys know this probably, but my business is JRH Graphics, and we help businesses tell their story. So we're really focusing on, to me, I always focus on what the story is and how you can get people to engage with that story. So transparency is one of those things that comes up every day in my line of work. Everybody's, looking to be transparent and not sure even what it really means. It's similar to a conversation I had previously with Lee on authenticity, where it's such a buzzword, but it's not really clearly defined. So that's why I wanted to talk about that today. So, Mel, what does transparency mean to you?
Transparency to me means really being fully present when trying to communicate brand messages, or whether you're at a live event or a virtual event or you're online. It just means the willingness in some cases also to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were saying earlier, it's like a comfort. You have to feel comfortable in a situation in order to be fully transparent. For me, I sometimes struggle with, being fully there and fully myself. You were saying that my antisocial guy was very much me. And that's true, because that's one of the personas in my business that I allow to kind of be almost 100% me. I have my rants, I have the discussions, I have the information, but it's really truly a representation of me, where sometimes my other personas may not be that they're transparent in their own way, I guess, but it's not truly me. And that's one of those things that I kind of struggle with when talking about transparency, because am I being transparent in my persona? Is that really who I am? I always kind of struggle with that a little bit.
I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, we wear so many different hats, and in a little bit what you're saying is kind of which hat are you wearing, which day,
right?
When, or, and also, are you really showing up as you when you're wearing that hat? I think, I was talking with somebody the other day who needed to have a difficult discussion with an employee. And we were talking about the culture that they have at their business and how they've had previous conversations with this person, and that the person showed up one way in an interview and showed up a different way day one to show up at work. And they seem to get it and to really be present. And when they showed up at work, they've kind of, it appears to the employer like they checked out.
Right.
And part of it in the beginning, I think, during like a probationary period, they really wanted to look at it to see, am I not giving this person enough support? Is something maybe happening that they don't really feel comfortable with? And it took me a while to actually meet this person in the process of, working with the business.
Right.
But when I met the person, they seemed so absolutely uncomfortable. And I think it is, you've got to feel comfortable, whether you're a representative of a business, whether you're the owner of the business, whatever the role is, you have to feel a little bit of confidence, mm-hmm. and a little bit of support that you're really showing up as you. And I think besides the being present, it's also the being mindful. We're so used to in so many different roles, whether you're comfortable or not, you're aware of the fact that whether you're online or you're person, somebody's always watching.
Someone's always watching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you look at, as a solopreneur or, an entrepreneur that you have maybe one or two employees, when you have to show up every day, but you may not need to be fully present every day. You're doing stuff, you're working. But when you have a business that has multiple employees, I think it's incredibly important that you show up every day and you're transparent, because your employees will they'll feed off of your energy. They'll feed off of what you're feeding them. And if they don't think you're being honest with them, you're not building trust. If you're not building trust with them, if you're not being transparent, if you're not telling them what's really happening, they're not going to trust you. I mean, it's where rumor mills start. It's where gossip starts. It's where all of that starts to happen when you're in a big company, and it's all detrimental to the success of the business.
That's really sure. One of my favorite bosses years ago, she was so transparent. She said from day one, when you have an issue, she says, the second you feel that tingly feeling that something's not right, I'd like you to come to me. And she says, the reason why I'd like you to bring it to me is I may know something else that'll help you increase your comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
That'll help you feel more confident. And we realized that in our day-to-day, she was planning 6 to 9 months out. And we were never part of, that discussion. You got your part of the plan maybe a little bit before it was time to execute it. But the knowledge that we were in a really safe environment with somebody who respected us, it really made it a really comfortable place to work, even when it wasn't the most pleasant work day.
Yeah.
It could really get challenging. And she kept her door open. During every meeting, her door was always open.
That was in my past life, that was one of my requirements. I actually, in my last store, took the door off of my office. And it made my regional manager crazy because he used to come in and close the door. And my door was never closed. And anybody from, my assistant manager straight down to the bookseller that was just hired, and every single tour that each new person had, it included my office, and they said, you can come and ask him anything if he's here. Now, did that help with my, productivity? Not always, but it created a culture where people felt safe. They knew they could learn. They knew they could ask questions, and they knew they could be a part of the planning process and what we were doing next. Because my big thing was I had a chalkboard wall that said, what's next? And
that's cool.
Everybody could write what's next, because I was never looking at what's happening now. I was 6, 9, 12, 16 months out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to be in that business. But what did people want to see from the store? So giving them the opportunity to do that, it allowed me to be. It's very difficult when you have a lot of employees. I had at my peak busy times over 100 employees, and getting them all to feel like you were being open and honest with them, and is a difficult challenge. So I know how businesses or entrepreneurs feel if they've got multiple employees. It's tough to show up every day, be present every day, be fully transparent, but it's incredibly important.
It is too, especially as you're trying to build a team. Yeah. I think you have a choice of how you show up as an entrepreneur, and especially in the beginning, if you're moving from solo entrepreneur to that first employee. I remember a work situation that was a little less than pleasant, where I started working for somebody in their home. He had a real challenge with being transparent. And part of it was he wasn't really visualizing how he would be as an employer and what it would be like to have an employee who was a couple of years younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
And it really taught me a lot about language and communication and style. And I think he dreamt of having a business, but he never aligned his personality with being a business partner or being an employer. And he always came off like it was his ship. And I learned a lot about styles from him, about the the one thing that was really challenging for him is he never showed up as vulnerable. And then one day, all of a sudden, September 11th, we ended up in a really vulnerable situation for all of us. And we saw very different sides of each other. And he was like, don't leave me. And I'm like, I have to go home before they shut down transportation methods. And he's like, no, don't leave me. And I was like, you'll be fine. Your new wife who's pregnant with your first child is safely out of the city. You're good. You're good. You'll have a lot of company in the city. And he's like, no, don't leave. Mm-hmm. It was really an interesting thing after years of working with this person who never really shared anything of themselves in a way to kind of connect or encourage others, that all of a sudden it was like, no, don't leave. Yeah. I think it was really, really interesting to see them transparent.
Right.
Real reminder, our fears are sometimes underneath whether we are transparent, whether we're willing to be vulnerable with others as an employee or as a person.
Yeah. And I think that kind of really brings us to like transparency in you. Like your business can be transparent. Your business can share, all of its information that's out there. We'll talk a little bit about, not giving away the secret recipe, but like the person that is at the helm, the person that, and really the entire company, all the people in the company, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be okay with being vulnerable sometimes. And that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people. I know that I would not show up as vulnerable in my previous life. I do now because I understand the importance of it. And it's sort of part of my brand, just being there. Like the reason for me doing what I'm doing is because of a very vulnerable situation. So I let people know about that. But that doesn't mean that I allow myself to be vulnerable every day. Tie into your branding and your story, what you want to tie into your branding and your story, and you create a culture around that. And as long as that's based in your truth, because I think transparency is, I don't know, I'm getting off topic here. Bring me back in.
I think you are kind of there, but I think you're going in kind of a boomerang. Yeah. And it's really a reminder that when we're talking about stuff that has to do with our business, that has to do with our brand, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on in our head.
It's a real reminder in terms of branding. We feel responsible for transparency. Mm-hmm. We feel responsible for communicating clearly. Are they going to understand what I just said? And what's somebody going to? And really, we have to, just like we were saying before, the ability to really just be able to laugh at ourselves and relax. I think that's a really good part of it. But don't worry, when it bubbles up, don't worry. You're with somebody else who trusts you, so you're good.
Yeah, I was like, I know where I'm going with this, but I can't quite put it into the right words. But it's because vulnerability has always been hard for me. It's always been hard for me, and it's funny that it's what I based my business on, but because that was such a powerful moment in my life, that it allowed me to be, create a business that's based on something that made me vulnerable, but it also made me strong.
And it's really personal.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. What pushed me into, becoming an entrepreneur finally was two friends giving me orders in the same week, and I couldn't play at it anymore. Mm-hmm. And, it really was, when I mentioned it to somebody else, how I was so ecstatic, to get like a couple of like 4-figure orders. And somebody says, that's great. What business structure? They really reminded me to align everything else to be able to support that. And that's what really pushed me into it. But I think my vulnerability underneath it was I became an entrepreneur out of losing somebody that I loved while I was holding her hand. And it caused me to fundraise. And in the process of fundraising, I started selling.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of selling, I started serving. But I think the vulnerable part is really what makes it interesting for people to engage and connect with us, whether it's personally or with our brand. It's not a story maybe that we would tell everybody. It's not a story that we would necessarily be comfortable telling fully, but I loved your stories on your blog, and I'm grateful that you're sharing your talents with us because something inspired you. You know, but I think that the really hard part about transparency is also who's showing up, whether it's the professional, whether it's the personal, or whether it's a blend. And I think that's the part that really gets complicated about it.
Right. I definitely feel like that's the trickiest part for me, because I know what I have in my brand, and I know what I want to talk about. I know my audience. I know, like, it's small businesses, it's people, it's smaller, mom and pop shops. It's, people that aren't doing social media right now. It's that kind of area is where I want to be. I'm not the person that does a Fortune 500 company where I need to create just one boring story that everybody regurgitates. That's not me. So knowing my audience and how I can show up for my audience and be approachable and be understanding of their situation and be just fully there for them helps so much in me being able to share my story and use it as an example for them to build their story. If I wasn't transparent in my story, I don't think I would be able to get anybody else to share their real story, share their authentic self. Because if I'm not transparent and they don't feel like I'm being transparent, there's not that comfort where people will be able to say, this is my brand. I built it because of this, whatever this is. That why is what I need in order to build their story, and really create an engaging story for their brand. I need to have a why. And that's, fraught in emotion, always going to be emotional. No matter what, your why is emotional. So if I'm not transparent, if they don't know my why, they're not going to trust me to be able to kind of discover theirs.
I think working with companies of different sizes, some that are, very corporate, some are direct sales, some are startups, some are mid-sized and established people. Our largest client spends about mid six figures on one event.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they reach their audience. They're in front of the right person.
Right.
And I think in their case, they rarely show the vulnerability. They're in cybersecurity. So you don't really see the vulnerability of the brand. You see the I've got you.
Right.
You see the confidence. You see the power. You never really hear the brand story in their case, which I kind of think is interesting. But it's an interesting conference that they go to. They go to the Black Hat conference. It's more, we're here. One of the games is people are trying to break into your phones.
Yeah.
They try. And there's always a challenge because they're trying to remind people that they're not necessarily safe. Right. So I think it's a rare situation. And like you say, companies of large sizes that don't necessarily have a branding guide, a style guide, a communication guide, it's interesting to work with. But I love working with people who aren't sure where to begin on transparency because I understand it.
Yes.
Having been a full-time employee with a part-time business that I hid, so I really understand the invisible part or the where do I start?
Right.
But I think the part that's hard about the story is people sometimes aren't sure which stories are important to the person or the audience that they're speaking with. And they have so many great stories, they're really not sure how to tell them or when to tell them or why to tell them. And I think that part we were talking about before, when everything bubbles up, there's like so much there. You really have to almost separate it into shorter sound bites,
Right.
or tell the story over time. In some cases, make sure there's somebody interested in the story who's really with you,
Right.
and build up that audience of people who care.
Yeah.
To know your why. So they help you share it.
Yeah, and that's exactly, you want to build up your audience of people that they engage with you because they see something in you that they can, they feel is right. They see something that aligns with them. So they know, okay, I like this person. I'm not sure exactly why. I have this feeling I like them. But, as you tell your story, as you develop your story, they get to know you more. They get to trust you more. They get to feel more comfortable with you. And that's, they're going to be your clients, your followers, your audience. They're going to be your audience for life. If you get them on that emotional hook and, they identify with you and you're transparent, you're trustworthy, they understand where you're coming from, then that's going to be, your followers for life. As long as you don't screw up, but your followers for life. And I think it's funny that you say, you got to kind of break it down into smaller chunks, because all of what I do, I feel like I'm breaking things down into smaller chunks for people and digestible versions of their story. And, I've worked with clients and I've been like, okay, so this story is for this situation. And I give them like a folder of, these are the stories for this situation. These are the folder for the stories with this situation. And if you have this is that when you use this. Because you have to remember it's a soundbite.
That's really great that you leave them with a strategic plan of what to share and when and why. And a lot of us, and especially in the beginning, it's really hard to plan how we use the proprietary stuff or that secret sauce stuff that you don't normally necessarily share,
Right.
but that you're sharing it with somebody who's hopefully ready to receive it. I think that it's a real gift that you have to be able to break it up. But I think the hard part is, as an entrepreneur, we don't think of the strategy behind it. We think of, what tool do I need to use on a specific day, or what skill set sometimes is needed to fulfill a goal or an objective or help out on a project. Yeah. I'm grateful for becoming more comfortable in the virtual world to really, build a much stronger team of strategic alliances and people who you can check in with. Whether it's, to check out a trend or learn how to do something. But I think for me, I would never have been as transparent without the virtual world. I was the quiet person in the Facebook groups. Yeah. I just hung out there. I would go into a group to see whether it was a good group for a client. I didn't really participate. I didn't really post, one group that I kept recommending, that's a local group, was really a high integrity group. And one day I saw a post from somebody I had known for 20 years. I used to work with her sister. And she put out a question, and I realized, when I saw her name, I realized almost immediately I knew her. And it was like, I really got into this thread. She needed t-shirts for her husband's business. And I really got into this thread because I'm like, I really have to figure out where it is that I know her from. She was using her maiden name. So it was kind of, like in the gray cells. And she used her maiden name because her daughter also had a business. And as she supported her daughter as an entrepreneur, she didn't want to always be the mom chiming in on her daughter's posts. So I thought it was kind of cool, that here they both are trying to build their business with integrity and show up to help others, but using just a shorter version of her name,
right? So
that she could really feel like she could have her own voice without being mom piping in,
right?
Yeah. And I think it was cute because it showed the vulnerability. It also showed I really care that my kid's successful. I
Right.
care that I'm successful, and at the same time, I want you to get an impartial opinion or feel like you got an impartial business opinion of something that's happening with this business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny. It kind of reminds me of, so the first time that I had a meeting with a client, talking about transparency and even a little bit of imposter syndrome. The first time I had a meeting with a client, the funniest thing was I'm like, what does an entrepreneur wear to a meeting with a client? And I looked at my closet. I go, I don't know what the hell I wear, because I was in a shirt and tie every day previously. It was a shirt and tie, my dress pants, and my dress shoes. That's what and I had other clothes, but they weren't work clothes. So I was like, what does an entrepreneur wear to a client meeting? I'm going, I don't know what the hell to wear. Finally, figure out what to wear, get all dressed up, and I would walk in DC everywhere, because I would be able to walk. I'd clear my head, I'd take some photos, and I'd get to my meeting. So I'm walking. All of a sudden, this gray cloud comes over the building, and I go, oh crap. And I'm still 4 blocks away from where I'm going. I start walking faster. I've got my computer in one hand and start walking faster, my camera on my other shoulder. And 2 seconds later, downpour, soaking wet. And meanwhile, I spent 6 hours trying to figure out what to wear. And I get to the meeting and I'm completely soaked through and through. It was the biggest downpour I've ever experienced. And I sat down across from my client, who would be my future client. And I go, I'm so embarrassed. She's like, it rained. What happened? I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. I didn't have an umbrella and this and that. She goes, it rained. You're fine. And I go, but I had to do this and then this, and all your papers I brought you are wet. It was Lee, actually. And she's like, it's okay. It rained. And I was like, okay, I got this. But it took me almost being stripped down to then be myself. After I was soaking wet, and I got some paper towels from the counter, dried myself, my face at least, my glasses, but it almost took that for me to realize that I could just be me, and it would be okay.
And you were smart enough not to have printed them on a dot matrix. See, you were just worried about the papers being wet, not watercolor.
Not watercolor, yes. Yes. So, but it was kind of a weird reminder right at the beginning of my business. Okay, it's okay to be me. It's okay to be stripped down to that person who's might be a little bit awkward and a little bit, but it was okay. And I didn't matter what I was wearing. I still got the client.
I think in the beginning, the really cool part about reminder just to be present was to just show up, to have the courage to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you were extremely prepared, whether your brand or your messaging felt savvy, but just show up ready to help.
Right.
And I used to have my trick back in transparency days. I'm an earring nut. And my trick back in the transparency days was to wear one of 3 pairs of lucky earrings. I had earrings I wore to big clients. I had earrings I wore to smaller clients. And I had earrings that I wore when I just needed to show up and I wanted to dazzle a client.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a joke, but I treated them kind of like carrying something for luck.
Right.
And I think that was the thing too. It reminded me, I was superstitious enough about building relationships and wanting to build them in a really clear way to show up that I wanted to help people. And I thought it was funny because one day I showed up to a meeting and I had forgotten my earrings. And the choice was, hey, you have a choice. You're just you. Earrings, no earrings, no. And it was something so silly, but it's like, it's like carrying a lucky coin in your pocket or something, or setting that intention that you're really hoping to really build that relationship with integrity. Really was just a reminder, keep it really simple. You're here to help this client.
Yeah.
No matter what you're wearing, no matter what you say, you're here to be a really great listener, to learn what their problems are. and to try and help them solve them.
Right. And I think we all recognize that, but it's almost, to me, it was like that, what I needed to get in the door. Once I was in the door, once I started talking, I get nervous, I get a little flustered, but once I started talking, I'm like, okay, I got this. Okay, I got this. And I forget that whatever my lucky charm or whatever my thing was that got me in that door is even there. So like having that confidence and that ability to say, I've got this, is without the lucky charms, without the crutches, without the whatever they may be, it's hard to get there. For entrepreneurs, for employees, for everybody, it's hard to get to that point where you can say, I got this.
It takes a while. I remember the first event where we were setting up a display indoors for my business. And I had a checklist, and event marketing wasn't a specialty of mine then. It became one from all the mistakes that you make. And then you're like, hey, I need to help other people so this doesn't happen to them. I forgot almost everything. And we were finally almost all set up. And I realized I don't have any business cards. And the show's about to start. And then the perfectionist came out of, I need to move this around, or I need to move that around. And the first two people who came to stop by were from a large local military academy, and then somebody from West Point. And these two people coming by is finally what stopped me. It made me realize the need to just be present, and just really to be there and try and help, whether it's answering questions or, helping somebody discover a solution. And it took a while, but those first two people being of such like an up here caliber, in terms of like dreaming of who I was going to meet that day.
Right.
It really helped me just be me. Just show up and try and be aligned with you and who you're trying to reach. And don't worry about the bumps, and, don't worry about the warts, and we met one of the most amazing friends that day. And she said to me, she says, you're really different from other people in your industry. And I remember having the courage to ask her why she said that. She says, where have you been? Why have I not met you yet? And I said, I just joined the chamber. She says, well, you should have joined sooner. And I started laughing. But I think sometimes to help you with transparency, you need to know that you're comfortable, but that you're also in the right place.
Right.
And that part, it can really, all of our fears, all of our, wondering what ifs, and, is this perfect? Waiting to conceal stuff before we launch it, keeping the proprietary stuff safe so no one knows about the secret, almost like the countdowns. But I think we've just got to really, really be present.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we need to remember, especially with transparency and vulnerability and all of this, is nobody knows our businesses better than we do. We have been doing our business for longer than anybody else because there's nobody else doing our business. And we are our own people, and we do things differently than, I do things maybe differently than you do, and you do them maybe differently than some other people that we come across. That doesn't make us any less of an expert, any less of, we know our business, we know what we're doing, and we have to trust in that in order to be transparent.
It's hard though when somebody's waiting for their first client.
Yeah.
That person who's just, made the shift, or it's a side hustle, and, they're trying to do all the right things. I really understand the fear and the anxiety from that perspective. I think the expert part is one thing, but on a great day, you don't always feel like an expert. You don't always feel like you've got it.
Right.
You may be about to try something new and we need more support, or we need to learn how to figure something out, whether it's technology or how to present something or how to do something.
Right.
And
that's where people like you come in very handy, not only as a connector, but as a mentor. You provide so much information, so many connections for people that are going through, the business. I had my family that helped me, and like you said, the son of an entrepreneur. So I knew what it was like, what it was going to be like. Having that alone makes things a lot easier, because just knowing that your life could go crazy at any second. My family, be there knowing that they've gone through this and I understood it, that helped me. That was my support system. But I think it's important for people to have a support system outside of their business that can help them in situations that get wacky.
I was really lucky with amazing mentors and really amazing coaches, from, talking about an employer who was uncomfortable because he didn't know what it was going to be like to have an employee. His business partner was brilliant. She was born to be a mentor. Mm-hmm. And I was very grateful to be adopted. And I think it's one of the things that helps later. I was allergic to being a coach in the beginning, and here we are. Teacher's kid, but at the same time, you need people to help you open doors, mm-hmm. or you never learn to step through them. We need people to help us climb a hurdle, climb a mountain, mm-hmm. And people to be really generous with their knowledge and occasionally with their time, just to really help us get going. And I think that part of being transparent when we need help, as an entrepreneur, it took me a long time to ask for help. I was really lucky. The universe seemed to bring it before I needed it, because not knowing how to navigate the entrepreneurial journey in the beginning, I didn't know who to ask in the beginning, mm-hmm. of saying, this is going to be overwhelming and I'm not going to catch it all. Mm-hmm. And I need your help.
Right.
And I think that's part of the transparency of being an entrepreneur. People will like, oh, let me try and do this for 3 hours. I tried to do something on Canva. I learned to give it up quickly. Not my thing.
Not your thing.
Not my thing. Not my thing.
Yeah. I think it's funny because your vulnerability was obviously, present in that situation where you felt like you don't know when to ask for help. And I think that's common with entrepreneurs. And it's a vulnerability. It's like you don't want to admit that you need help.
It was silly for me because I was a teacher's kid, mm-hmm. and people would always encourage you to ask questions.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, sometimes we cut off the one thing that we need to do. Yeah. It's like, as a teacher's kid, every teacher would always ask you, ask questions, or great teachers would encourage you to do it.
There's no such thing as a bad question.
No.
And that's, even in my, in the teaching that I do, basically, and the webinars and stuff, it's very basic, but I'm always asking for people to ask me questions because, one, it gives you insight into what they're understanding, what they know, what they don't know, but also because I know everybody has a question. I can say 5 sentences and people are going to have a question about it.
Sometimes in solitude, and depending on what our learning style is, and you're working on something in a really quiet, in a really quiet space, sometimes that question, we don't let it bubble up. We don't realize that it needs to be addressed, that it's something that we'll need help for. People sometimes won't stop to ask a question because they're like, I need to get this done. Even if it's not perfect, I need to get this done. And I think that part as an entrepreneur is what causes us to kind of rush. We have to mix the personal stuff with the professional stuff.
Right.
There's got to be a blend of who we are and what that style is that we want to bring to our business, to an industry, to a client, whether we're showing up live in person or whether it's virtual. I laugh. It took me a really long time to learn how to be transparent, to have a conversation like the one that we're having. I'm really grateful for Eve and Linda, and for just great tips. People had to really remind me, you have to show up as us. Right. And I think that combination of feeling like I'm supposed to be an expert, I should have all the answers, or I'm supposed to solve problems. I should know the solution, but we really, just to really be mindful in all of it, we all need help.
Yeah, we all need help, and we don't. We're not Google. I can't, like I can't recall everything. If somebody says, "Hey, Jonathan," I don't just give them the answer. I don't necessarily know it. It's not. I'm not. Hey, Google. I got to be able to, come up with the answer. I need to know a little bit more in some situations, or I need to research it. And I always tell my clients, what makes you an expert is you know where to find the information, the right information. You know how to measure the information that you get and know if it's right, or if you need to question it more. Like what makes you an expert is you have a framework that allows you to understand an area of, your zone of genius. You understand it. That's what you know. Do you know exactly everything in it? No. And that's okay. That doesn't make you not an expert.
I think the thing too, as you're saying, with confidence, is that we need to be confident that we have the ability to reach out to the right professional, expert, solution provider, and the right coach or the right mentor.
Yeah.
The family member who's been through it, the industry, the person with expertise. I had a potential client earlier this year, and I'm really grateful. He was starting to think of what a business he wanted to start. And I'm really delighted because he started a business with his daughter recently. And they're at opposite ends of the career spectrum with different knowledges, different approaches, different styles. And it's really cool to watch them blend it. So somebody with deep expertise and somebody with a really inquisitive mind,
right,
they're kind of matching and meeting and blending their styles to really build an amazing business. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to, because you have to be transparent when you're trying to select a partner.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be transparent, and you also have to acknowledge your strengths and your weaknesses. It's the same thing with me when I'm helping a business define their brand. What are your strengths? What are your competitors' strengths? What do your competitors do better than you do? Because there's going to be things, and you can't be everything to everybody. So what is your strength? Where are you doing? And acknowledging then that you have weaknesses. And if you're looking for a business partner that can complement you and help you in those areas is important and interesting to watch the journey. I love watching the journey of people working together, because they may seem completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and you might look at them and go, they're never going to be able to work together. And by the end of them working together, whereas a year or 20 years, there's just this almost symbiosis of like they work together. It worked. Sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, it does, and it's really an interesting phenomenon to watch.
It is kind of cool, but it is hard. It's also, I think, one of the things, as we're being transparent and being really conscious of sharing our strengths or weaknesses, things we'd like to work on, skills we'd like to build, is finding and partnering with people who can help you share that. It makes it a better business world. It makes it a better world to live in. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
All right. So let's say I'll give you my takeaway first. And then what's your takeaway from all this? So that are, people who might watch this all the way through, who knows, get something from it. So for me, I think it's really kind of sharing your journey fully, talking about what you're doing, talking about your strengths, your weaknesses, this full journey that you're on, sharing it fully and letting people know where they can help, where you're struggling, being a little bit vulnerable. It's all very important if you're going to really build a business that's transparent. If you are the head of the business, you need to make sure that you're building a transparent business by sharing where you've been, where you want to go, having like core values in place so that people understand what your business is about is going to make the process of being transparent a hell of a lot easier, I think. Because if you have these core values and you're being transparent in your journey, people know what they're getting. and they know what to expect. And while you can change, things might change or shift a little bit, there's just these core values that you believe in that are part of your business that make it a lot easier to be transparent in that. And I think that's kind of my of all of the things that we said today. I wrote down a couple words, and that's pretty much what I'm taking away from it for people who are looking, to be transparent and how they can do that and what it really means in their business.
I think my takeaway, it really comes down to respect, self-respect, mutual respect, and that we need to build an environment where we trust each other, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're working in a partnership. And I think the respect and the trust, just like you're talking about the core values, I think those are kind of building blocks to being able to blend styles, rise to a challenge, align and balance, different factors, different needs of a client, of a team, of an industry, and really helps you show up to serve. And that the respect and trust are really important because we're in front of different audiences. And if we don't respect and trust that audience, whoever it is, they're not going to respect or trust us.
Right.
And it doesn't always mean that you have to be vulnerable on the first date.
Right.
But that you have to be available and I think underneath it, accessible. And I think the respect and trust ensure access, that it's accessible to all, that you're building an inclusive brand. Because otherwise, if people can't see where to connect with you and your business, it's like a closed vault door.
There's a feeling that you have when you feel like somebody's being transparent with you and being really open and honest with what they're saying. You kind of can feel that. And clearly the sun is now coming in through my window and shining on my face. So you can sort of feel that there's just something there when somebody's being transparent. And there's also that weird feeling when they're not, that lack of trust. So,
but I think it does. I think there's, and it's cool that the sun is joining you. I think there has to be a warmth there for you. You're really trying to create an environment that's not cold and sterile, that's tactile, that kind of has a feel. It looks like one of, Jonathan's great, photos, and it becomes even more than three-dimensional. There's warmth there, there's light there. And it encourages others to want to connect with you.
Right.
And to want to maybe participate and to learn more about you or your business or your secret sauce.
Well, I think just part of that, and I always use it as the just being true to yourself. When you're in branding, you can't force it. You can't just say, I want to be this person right here, and this person is nowhere near where you are over here. Like, you can't be somebody you're not. So be true to yourself and find that, comfort in there. And when you find that comfort, it adds that warmth. It adds that real humanness to it. And that's missing in a lot of situations. So I think that's important, is really just being human, being you, being true to yourself. So now, where do people find you if they want to talk more to you?
If they want to talk more to me, great places to find me are Increase Your Visibility on Facebook. Click on that Learn More tab. That's probably the quickest way if you're on Facebook. Wow. If you're on LinkedIn, find Increase Your Visibility. Find me personally. I'd welcome a chance to connect for virtual tea or coffee, explore synergy, or help somebody get unstuck. And really, Jonathan, thank you so much for having suggested this. And we can finally cross it off the bucket list.
Cross it off the bucket list. It'll be a good thing. I got to edit it together, and we'll do that. And I'll make sure I add the Increase Your Visibility links there so that people can find you. And you're in the middle of your Be Visible Intensive right now, right?
Yep, Be Visible Intensive. So we're invisible to be profitable, but the intensive is invisible to be profitable. Trying to see how much support and growth and revenue we can help build in our business before 2020 and carry us into 2020. It's exciting after doing a lot of one-to-one coaching or coaching for small teams to do coaching in a group setting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun concept that I never thought I would enjoy. I get so much out of conversations in your groups and stuff like that it's amazing how much value there is and how many amazing people you know. So
I'm appreciative of that, but I'm also grateful. In the beginning, I built a community and I wasn't really sure who it was for. I just knew I needed it to be a safe community and a collaborative one and a place where people could promote freely.
Mm-hmm.
And, we don't want to be the best kept secret.
Right.
We really need to find people who can help us take next steps and can help us pass challenges. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to learn and meet more people. And I'd love to grow the Illuminations groups more with more talented entrepreneurs so we all grow and make this a better place.
All right. Well, I'll make sure everybody knows how to find the Illuminations groups and, we can continue to work on everything all together as a group.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Have a great one. I will see you soon. We'll talk to you soon too.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Take care.